Hey, what up, America? Welcome to All Sports LA. I'm your host, Bushan Glover, sponsored by A Better Black America, a place where we seek solutions and resolutions to create a better Black America. Now, today is Tuesday, April 25th, 2017. Now, we're going to talk a little NBA. We're going to talk a little NFL draft. Now, let's go ahead and dive into the NBA. Now, the Cavaliers and the Warriors have already handled their business with sweeps in the first round. The Cavaliers swept the Pacers, and the Golden State swept the Trailblazers, which is prepping the stage, not setting the stage, which is prepping the stage for a possible repeat of last year's finals. Now, timing is everything. Now, both teams are playing championship caliber basketball, and the best thing about it is that both teams appear to be healthy. So timing is everything. Now, we have three Western Conference games on the schedule tonight. We got the Spurs versus the Grizzlies, and we have the Clippers versus the Jazz, which is locked in at 2-2. But the night is going to be kicked off and capped off tonight when we have Game 5 between OKC and the Houston Rockets, which Houston is up 3-1. And it's a win or go home for OKC, which is a must win tonight. Now, the MVP race is a two-man race between former teammates Russell Westbrook and James Harden, with Kawhi Leonard somehow hovering in the midst. Now, Westbrook is still my favorite going into tonight's game, which he must win, or the team must win, and he needs to have another triple-double. And that victory to push for a Game 6 in the first round. Now, getting knocked out in the first round 4-1 is just one game away from being swept. Now, that's not a good thing because voters that are on the fence could lean the other way and cast their vote for Harden. And I don't think Kawhi Leonard's going to get those votes because at this time, a vote for Leonard is a vote for Westbrook in this case. Now, this is a big if. Now, if the voters have not casted their MVP votes thus far, and let me go ahead and give you this side note. Now, prior to the 2016-2017 season, prior to this season, the NBA, for the first time, now prior to this, the NBA usually presents the MVP award during the first round of the playoffs. And there's a few guys that have got knocked out in the first round and actually won the MVP. Dirk Nowitzki, Charles Barkley, to name a few. And there's just a couple other out there. You statisticians and fact checkers to go ahead and just back me on this. There's just a couple more out there. But this season here, prior to the 2016-2017 season, the announcement came in the first round. Now, this year's award will be announced on June 26th. This is the first annual NBA ceremony. It's going to be on Monday, June 26th. Not postseason, but that's post-finals. So no one can confirm if the voters' votes are in at this time. If they're not in, it doesn't, getting knocked out in the first round is not a good thing. So Westbrook is going to at least have to push a Game 7 to be the consensus, in my personal opinion. And if he gets knocked out in the first round and James Harden and the Rockets get knocked out in the second round, I would still give it to Westbrook. But if Harden and the Rockets make it to the finals, then there goes the co-MVP, James Harden case, the argument, the debate back and forth, so on and so forth. So if the votes are not in as we speak, this year's playoffs will play a impact and a very significant role in who will be crowned the MVP of the NBA. Now let's go ahead and just jump into some NFL draft news. Now, yesterday when I turned the TV on and turned to different sports stations and outlets like I do on a daily basis, all I saw was breaking news. It's all in red. Breaking news. Jabrill Peppers test positive. Breaking news. Jabrill Peppers test positive. Breaking news. Jabrill Peppers test positive. And I'm looking like, man, what the guy take? What was he on? What did he test positive for? Was it steroids? Was it Oxycontin? Was it meth? What was it? And guess what? he tested positive for a diluted sample. What the hell is a diluted sample? Now, it says he failed the drug test, which figuratively he failed, because in the NFL, it's considered a diluted, let me get this right, a diluted sample is considered a positive test. But what did he test positive for? A diluted sample? Okay. It's just not making sense. And these things typically always happen around the draft time. Now, the Chargers sit around 6 or 7. I don't care what the man tested positive or not tested positive for. He will be the hell of a pickup at that 6 or 7 pick. And he could be the strong safety, for the future of the Chargers. He could be the Troy Polamalu of how the Steelers had a Troy Polamalu for 10, 12 years. He could be our Troy Polamalu for the Chargers, because the Rams don't have a first-round pick. They gave it up last year. So Jabrill Peppers tested positive, and when they talked to the guy, he's an undersized linebacker. So at the combines, he was the only player to test for 2 positions. The only player to test for two positions. He tested for linebacker, and he tested for defensive back, which I believe he's going to default to as a defensive back because he's around 213, 215 pounds, around 6 feet. But he has a high motor. And when I was watching the sports outlets yesterday, and they were talking about his positive drug test, and they kept showing his highlights. Based on what the highlights showed, regardless, that's a talented player. And he will get drafted in the first round. And usually when things happen like this, you got teams like the Patriots and Steelers, teams that's always historically in the back of the draft, that always make the playoffs, that goes to the conference championship, those guys. Because they typically default to a better team. So I believe those are the tricks of the trade that these owners throw into there right before the draft, so they can somehow get defaulted players down the road, just like Minnesota getting Randy Moss. And Randy Moss was a top 5, top 10 pick for sure. But he ended up playing with, Randall Cunningham and the great Chris Carter. So there you have it. So it's a blessing in disguise, because it's a player by the name of Reuben Foster who also tested positive for, we don't know, but a diluted sample. And he's also an undersized linebacker who needs to be around 230. And he said himself out of his own mouth that, he was sick the week of, and he came in, he weighed around 226, 227, but he wanted to be 228, 229. So he drank endless amounts of bottles of water, which somehow the test came back diluted. But in the same case of Jabrill Peppers has a notorious history of cramping. A notorious history of cramping. And when you cramp, what do? You hydrate yourself. The man said he drank 8 to 10 bottles of water between days, because the first day he tested out as a linebacker, and the second day he tested out as a defensive back. So to go back to back, is unheard of. But for these hybrid athletes that we have in today's times, it's not unheard of. So he said he drank 8 to 10 bottles of water. Now, I've taken a drug test before. I was clean as a whistle. But for some strange reason, I could not pee. I couldn't. So therefore, I sat there with a nurse, and I drank glass after glass of ice water from the fountain inside of the medical facility in which I was taken. So after a while, after about 30 minutes to 45 minutes, maybe even an hour, told I'm ready. Go in the bathroom with the nurse. She turns off the water. She does something. She turns off the water for the toilet, the whole 9. You pee in this, you pee in the toilet, and we'll take care of everything else. So, mind you, I drank a whole bunch of water. So when I peed, it was so clear that I was like, wait a minute, it don't even look like pee, it looked like water. Okay? So when I came out, she looked at it and then she went back in the bathroom, checked everything. I didn't turn nothing on. Okay. And then she put the little heat sensor on there. The heat sensor passed and went on about her business. That probably came back as a diluted test. But there was no substance in my system to give me a dirty test. Because I know that the NFL and professional athletes, they'll do whatever to be successful. So they do different type of masking agents to pass. But in this case here, it is a logical explanation as to why. But for the news and the media to continue to put it out there, failed drug test, give the impression that these guys took something deliberately and it was found in their blood or in their urine. But in this case, only thing was found in their urine was large volumes of water. So there's no case here. And I watch the news outlets kind of every 30 minutes after 30 minutes, hour after hour, just have shows just basically talking about this. But Jabrill Peppers, he's going to be a defensive back. The Chargers will love to have him. We'll get into that tomorrow or Thursday about the draft. And then Reuben Foster, he's a top 10 pick as well. But, it's basically a sense of, there's always people that are already going to have something to say. Always going to have something to say. They got to spin it a different way. And I believe it's the better teams that release this information so these players could fall out of the top 10, out of the top 20, and go around 26, 27 to the Patriots and to Seattle and all of that. So it always happens that way. Always happens that way. But we're running out of time, and, this is, like I said, we're trying to get those 10,000 hours in to get to that mastery level, to take this thing public, but as I spar and as I get down privately and publicly, I'm just sharing information. So if you got insights, if you got questions or concerns, please comment if there's comments to be made. But with that being said, man, you guys have a beautiful day, and you have just tuned into All Sports LA with your boy, Bushawn Glover, Sports Edition. LA Talk Radio, Spreak. See y'all next time.